The rain had just started when the black SUV stopped outside the old convenience store. The Mafia boss, Rocco Moretti, stepped out to make a call, but instead, he heard a small voice behind him. "Sir, sir, can you buy my bike?" He turned. A little girl stood there holding a rusted pink bicycle, shivering under the rain. Shoes torn, face pale, eyes too tired for someone her age. Rocco frowned. "What are you doing out here alone?" She pushed the bike toward him with both hands. "Please, Mommy hasn't eaten in days. I can't sell the house stuff, so I'm selling my bike." Rocco felt something twist in his chest. Kids avoided him. Adults feared him. But this girl, she was desperate enough to approach a man like him. "How long since she last ate?" he asked quietly. The girl hesitated, then whispered, "Since the men came." Rocco's eyes narrowed. "What men?" She looked around nervously, making sure no one heard. "The ones who said Mommy owed money, and they took everything. Furniture, clothes. They even took my baby brother's crib." Rocco's jaw clenched. He had heard stories like this before. Loan sharks, extortionists, street thugs. But when the girl lifted her sleeve, when he saw the bruises on her thin arm, his blood went cold. They said Mommy shouldn't tell anyone," she added softly, "but I recognized one of them." Rocco leaned down, his voice low, steady. "Tell me who." She looked him right in the eyes, trembling. "It was a man from your gang, sir. My mommy cried and said, 'The Mafia took everything from us.'" Rocco froze. Not from guilt, but from the realization that someone under his own banner had dared to exploit a starving mother and child. He stood slowly, rain pouring down his coat. "Where is your mother now?" "Home," she whispered. "She's too weak to get up." Rocco handed her the keys to his SUV. "Get in," he said, "because whoever touched this child, whoever robbed them, whoever hid behind his name, was about to learn what it truly meant to fear the Mafia boss. Stay with me until the end, because what Rocco discovers inside that broken home will expose a betrayal deeper than he ever imagined. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Now, let's get started. The drive through the rain felt longer than it should have. Rocco's hands gripped the steering wheel while the girl sat quietly beside him, clutching her bike handles like they were the only thing keeping her grounded. Her name was Emma, she had told him. 7 years old, and she had been selling anything she could find for the past week, just to buy bread. "Turn here," Emma whispered, pointing down a narrow street lined with broken streetlights. The neighborhood looked like hope had packed up and moved away years ago. Cracked sidewalks, boarded windows, and the kind of silence that only comes from people too afraid to make noise. Rocco parked outside a small house with peeling, paint, and a front door that hung crooked on its hinges. The windows were dark, no electricity. He could smell the dampness and decay from the car. "She's probably sleeping," Emma said, climbing out with her bike. "She sleeps a lot now because it hurts less when you're not awake." Those words hit Rocco harder than any punch he had ever taken. He had built an empire on fear and respect, but this child spoke about pain like she was reading from a textbook. Too young to understand it, too experienced to pretend it didn't exist. They walked to the front door together. Emma pulled out a key from under a loose brick and turned it slowly. The door creaked open, revealing a house stripped bare. No furniture, no pictures on the walls, just empty rooms and the echo of footsteps on hardwood floors. "Mommy?" Emma called softly. "I brought someone to help." A weak voice answered from somewhere in the back of the house. "Emma? Baby, come here." Rocco followed the girl through the hallway, past rooms that looked like they had been ransacked by animals. In the kitchen, cabinet doors hung open, revealing nothing but dust and mouse droppings. The refrigerator was unplugged, its door propped open with a wooden spoon. They found Emma's mother in what used to be the living room, lying on a pile of old blankets in the corner. She looked up when they entered, and Rocco saw fear flash across her face when she recognized who he was. "Please," she whispered, trying to sit up. "Please don't hurt us. We don't have anything left to take." Rocco knelt down slowly, keeping his hands visible. "Ma'am, I'm not here to hurt you." Your daughter told me what happened. I need to know who did this." The woman, Sarah, looked between Rocco and Emma with confusion. You're the boss, aren't you? The one they work for?" "Some people claim to work for me," Rocco said carefully. "But what happened to you? This wasn't authorized. This wasn't business. This was cruelty." Sarah started crying then, quiet tears that spoke of exhaustion rather than relief. "They said I owed money to your organization. Said my husband had borrowed from you before he died. But Marcus never borrowed money from anyone. He worked 3 jobs just to avoid debt." Rocco felt his jaw tighten. "Tell me exactly what they said. Every word you can remember." The tall one, he had a scar across his cheek. He said Marcus had signed papers. Said the debt transferred to me when he died. $15,000 plus interest. Sarah wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "When I said I didn't have it, they started taking things. Said they'd come back every week until it was paid." "Did they show you any papers, any proof?" Rocco asked. "Just a piece of paper with Marcus's signature. But it didn't look right. His handwriting was different." Sarah looked at Emma, who had sat down beside her mother and was holding her hand. "They took everything in 2 trips. Furniture, appliances, even Emma's toys. Said if I called the police, they'd come back for something more valuable." Rocco understood the threat. In this world, when material things ran out, people started paying with their bodies, their dignity, their children. "The man with the scar," Rocco said, his voice deadly calm. "Did he give you a name?" "Vincent," Sarah whispered. "He said his name was Vincent and that everyone in the neighborhood knew better than to cross him." Rocco's blood turned to ice. Vincent Caruso, one of his lieutenants. A man he had trusted with collections and territory management. A man who had been skimming profits and apparently creating his own side business, using Rocco's reputation as leverage. "Mommy," Emma said quietly, "the man with the scar hurt Mrs. Patterson too. And the family with the new baby. I see them crying sometimes." Rocco looked at the child with new understanding. This wasn't an isolated incident. Vincent had been running his own operation in this neighborhood, using fear of the Moretti name to extort money from families who had nothing to give. "How many families?" Rocco asked Emma. She counted on her small fingers. 7 that I know about, maybe more. 7 families. 7 homes destroyed. 7 groups of innocent people living in terror because a man Rocco trusted had decided to build his own kingdom of suffering. Rocco stood up, his mind already calculating what needed to happen next. But first, he pulled out his phone and made a call. "Tony, I need you to bring groceries to an address I'm about to send you. Enough food for a week. And bring cash. $500. He paused, looking at Emma and Sarah. "Actually, make it 1,000. And Tony, bring it now." He hung up and turned back to Sarah. "Food will be here within the hour. The electricity will be back on tomorrow morning. And someone will be here to fix your door." "I don't understand," Sarah said. "Why are you helping us?" Rocco looked at Emma, who was still holding her mother's hand with the fierce protectiveness of a child who had grown up too fast. "Because someone used my name to hurt your family. And that's not just wrong, it's personal." What Rocco didn't tell them was that Vincent Caruso had just signed his own death warrant. But first, Rocco needed to understand the full scope of this betrayal. He needed to know how deep the corruption went, and how many of his own men were involved. Because in Rocco's world, there were rules. And the most important rule was simple. You never, ever target innocent families. You never steal food from children. You never leave mothers choosing between medicine and meals. Vincent had broken that rule. And now he was about to learn why Rocco Moretti had earned his reputation as the most feared man in the city. Reputation as the most feared man in the city. As Rocco left Sarah and Emma's house that night, his phone buzzed with a message from Tony confirming the groceries had been delivered. But Rocco's mind was already 3 steps ahead, calculating every move Vincent Caruso would make once word got back to him. Because men like Vincent always had informants, always had eyes watching. And by morning, he would know that Rocco Moretti had personally visited one of his victims. Rocco drove through the rain-soaked streets, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. 30 years he had been building his organization, 30 years of careful rules, of drawing lines that his men knew never to cross. And Vincent had shattered those lines for what? A few $1,000s stolen from families who barely had enough to survive? His phone rang. The name on the screen made his blood pressure spike even higher. Vincent Caruso. Boss. Vincent's voice was casual, too casual. Heard you were in my neighborhood tonight. Everything all right? Rocco's voice stayed level, controlled. Just checking on some business, Vincent. Nothing that concerns you. Course not, boss. Just making sure nobody was causing problems in my territory. You know how protective I get about the families under my watch. The audacity of those words nearly made Rocco laugh. Vincent was actually bragging about protecting the same families he was destroying. Either he was completely delusional, or he thought Rocco was stupid enough to believe the lie. Speaking of families, Rocco said slowly, I met an interesting woman tonight. Sarah Thompson. Name ring any bells? The silence on the other end stretched just long enough to confirm everything Rocco suspected. When Vincent finally spoke, his voice had lost some of its confidence. Thompson. Doesn't sound familiar, boss. Should it? Her husband, Marcus, apparently owed us money before he died. 15,000 plus interest. You handled the collection personally. Oh, right, yeah. That Thompson. Sad case, boss. Husband left her with a mountain of debt. Had to recover what we could, you know how it is. Rocco pulled into the parking garage beneath his office building, the concrete walls echoing the sound of his engine. Vincent, I need you to meet me tonight. Bring the paperwork on the Thompson account. Tonight? Boss, it's almost midnight. Tonight, Rocco repeated, his tone leaving no room for argument. My office, 1 hour. He hung up without waiting for a response. The next hour gave Rocco time to make some calls. To Tony, asking him to pull every file they had on Marcus Thompson. To his accountant, requesting records of any loans issued in the past 2 years. To his security chief, asking for surveillance footage from Vincent's recent activities. But most importantly, he called Detective Maria Santos, one of the few honest cops left in the city, someone he had worked with before when cleaning up messes that threatened innocent people. Rocco, Maria's voice was tired but alert. This better be important. It is. I need you to document something. 7 families in the Riverside neighborhood have been extorted by someone claiming to work for me. I'm handling it internally, but I want official records showing these people were victimized. You're actually calling the police on your own operation? This wasn't my operation, Maria. This was someone stealing my name to hurt families with children. And I need your help making sure these people get justice. There was a long pause. Send me the addresses. I'll have social services check on the families tomorrow. Already taken care of. Food, medical care, housing repairs. But they'll need protection from anyone trying to retaliate. Rocco, what exactly are you planning to do? What I should have done the moment I found out someone was using my reputation to starve children. Vincent arrived at Rocco's office exactly 1 hour later, carrying a thin manila folder and wearing the kind of nervous smile that meant he knew he was in trouble, but was still hoping to talk his way out of it. Rocco's office occupied the entire top floor of the building, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the city that stretched to the harbor. Vincent had been here dozens of times before, but tonight he hesitated at the threshold, like he was walking into his own funeral. Sit, Rocco said without looking up from the files spread across his mahogany desk. Vincent sat, placing the manila folder on the desk between them. Boss, if this is about the Thompson thing, I can explain everything. Please do. Look, the husband came to me 6 months ago, desperate for money, said his wife was pregnant, and they needed cash for medical bills. I told him we don't usually do personal loans, but he begged. Said he'd pay 20% interest. Rocco finally looked up, his dark eyes meeting Vincent's. 20%? Standard rate for high-risk loans, boss. You know that. Show me the paperwork. Vincent opened the folder and slid a document across the desk. Rocco examined it carefully, noting the signature, the date, the terms. Everything looked legitimate except for one crucial detail. Vincent, what's today's date? November 15th. And when did Marcus Thompson die? Vincent's face went pale. August 23rd. So he signed this loan agreement 2 months after he was already dead. The silence in the office was deafening. Vincent's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, but no words came out. Rocco stood up slowly, walking around the desk until he was standing directly behind Vincent's chair. You forged a dead man's signature to justify stealing from his widow and daughter. Boss, I can explain. You took furniture from a 7-year-old girl. You left a grieving mother with no way to feed her child. You put bruises on a little girl's arm. Rocco's voice remained calm, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. And you did it all using my name. Vincent started to turn around, but Rocco's hand on his shoulder kept him facing forward. How many other families? Vincent? I don't know what you mean. How many other forged documents? How many other dead husbands who mysteriously borrowed money from us? How many other children going hungry because you decided to build your own little empire? Vincent's breathing was getting faster, more panicked. Boss, you gotta understand. These people, they're nobodies. They don't matter to our real business. I was just making some extra money on the side. Wrong answer. Rocco's hand tightened on Vincent's shoulder. That little girl asked me to buy her bike so she could feed her mother. She was willing to give up the only toy she had left because a man claiming to work for me had taken everything else. Kids bounce back, boss? They always do. Even wronger answer. What happened next would send a message through every level of Rocco's organization. A message about what happened to men who hurt children. What happened to men who used the Moretti name to prey on innocent families. What happened to men who forgot that even in their world, some lines could never be crossed. But Vincent's night was just beginning, because Rocco had learned there were 6 other families, 6 other forged documents, 6 other children who had been forced to watch strangers steal everything they owned. And tomorrow morning, Vincent Caruso was going to help Rocco return every single thing he had stolen, whether he wanted to or not, D2 or not. By dawn, Rocco had everything he needed. Bank records showing Vincent's private accounts had grown by over $200,000 in 6 months. Surveillance footage of him personally loading stolen furniture into unmarked trucks. And most damning of all, a storage unit rented under a fake name, filled with everything he had taken from those 7 families. Vincent sat tied to a chair in that same storage unit, surrounded by the evidence of his crimes. Baby cribs, family photos, wedding rings, children's toys, even a wheelchair that belonged to an elderly man who could barely walk without it. You're going to return everything, Rocco said quietly, walking between the stolen items. Every dish, every blanket, every toy. And you're going to apologize to each family personally. Vincent's face was swollen from the night's interrogation, but his eyes still held defiance. And then what? You let me walk away? We both know that's not how this works. Rocco stopped in front of a small pink teddy bear, probably taken from Emma's room. He picked it up, remembering how the little girl had clutched her bike handles with the same desperate grip. You're right, Rocco said. That's not how this works. He turned to face Vincent directly. You stole from children. You forged documents using dead men's names. You put your hands on a 7-year-old girl. His voice remained calm, but every word carried the weight of a death sentence. In my world, there are consequences for crossing certain lines. Boss, please, I'll make it. Right. I'll pay back triple what I took. I'll disappear. You'll never see me again. Vincent, the moment you decided to hurt those families, you stopped being my problem. You became theirs. Rocco set the teddy bear down gently. And I always protect my people. What Vincent didn't understand was that Rocco had already made his choice the moment he saw Emma's bruised arm. This wasn't about money or territory or respect. This was about a little girl who had been forced to sell her bicycle because a grown man thought her suffering was profitable. Over the next 3 hours, Vincent found himself loading trucks with stolen goods under the supervision of Rocco's men. Every piece of furniture, every appliance, every personal item that had been taken from those 7 families was carefully catalogued and prepared for return. But Rocco had planned something more than simple restitution. The first stop was Mrs. Patterson's house, the elderly woman Emma had mentioned. Vincent knocked on the door, flanked by 2 of Rocco's men carrying her stolen television and family photographs. "Mrs. Patterson," Vincent's voice cracked as he spoke, "I'm here to return what was taken from you, and to tell you that it will never happen again." The old woman looked at him with a mixture of confusion and recognition. "You're the one who said my late husband owed money. You took my wedding china." "Yes, ma'am. I was wrong. Your husband never owed anyone anything." Vincent's hands shook as he spoke the words Rocco had made him memorize. "I forged documents. I stole from you, and I'm sorry." Mrs. Patterson accepted her belongings, but said nothing more. The shame in Vincent's eyes was punishment enough for now. The second stop was the young family with the newborn baby. Vincent personally carried the crib back into their home, watching as the mother broke down crying with relief. Her baby had been sleeping on a pile of blankets for weeks. By the time they reached Emma and Sarah's house, word had spread through the neighborhood. People stood on their porches, watching as trucks full of stolen goods rolled down their street. Some followed the convoy, wanting to see justice finally delivered to the man who had terrorized them. Emma was playing in her front yard when they arrived. She looked up and immediately recognized Vincent as the man with the scar. Fear flashed across her small face, and she ran toward the house, calling for her mother. "No," Rocco said firmly, stepping out of his car. "Emma, it's all right. He's here to give back what he stole." The little girl stopped running but stayed close to her front door, watching warily as Vincent and the other men began unloading furniture. Her couch, her mother's dresser, even her own small bed with the pink butterfly sheets. Sarah appeared in the doorway, looking stronger than she had the night before thanks to the food and medical attention Rocco had arranged. When she saw Vincent, her face hardened with an anger that surprised everyone. "You," she said, her voice steady despite the rage in her eyes. "You're the one who took my daughter's crib when she was crying. You looked at a 7-year-old child and decided her tears didn't matter." Vincent couldn't meet her eyes. "Ma'am, I'm here to return everything, and to pay for what I put you through." "Pay?" Sarah stepped closer, and even Rocco was impressed by the fierce protectiveness radiating from this grieving mother. "You think money fixes what you did to my daughter? You think cash erases the nights she cried herself to sleep because strangers stole her toys?" Emma had crept closer during her mother's speech, emboldened by seeing the fear in Vincent's eyes instead of her own. "You hurt my arm," she said quietly, "when I tried to keep my teddy bear." That's when Vincent finally broke. The weight of seeing his victims face to face, of hearing a child describe the pain he had caused, cracked something inside him that hadn't been touched by Rocco's physical interrogation. He knelt down to Emma's level, tears running down his scarred face. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry." Emma looked at him for a long moment, then at Rocco, then back at Vincent. "Will you promise never to hurt any more kids?" "I promise," Vincent whispered. "Okay," Emma said simply. "But you still can't touch my bike. I decided to keep it." Even Rocco smiled at that. But the day's reckoning was far from over. As Vincent finished returning the last of the stolen items, Rocco pulled him aside for a private conversation that the neighbors couldn't hear. "You understand, this doesn't end here," Rocco said quietly. "You've returned what you stole, but you haven't paid for what you did." Vincent nodded, knowing his fate had been sealed the moment Rocco discovered his crimes. "What happens now? Now you disappear, permanently. But not the way you think." Rocco handed him an envelope containing new identification documents, a bus ticket to a city 3,000 miles away, and enough cash to start over. "You're going to spend the rest of your life working with families like the ones you hurt. Homeless shelters, food banks, places where children need protection. Rocco's eyes were cold as winter steel. And if I ever hear that you've harmed another innocent person, if you ever use violence or intimidation against someone who can't fight back, I will find you. Vincent stared at the envelope, understanding the choice he was being given: exile and a lifetime of service, or a shallow grave in the industrial district. Why? Vincent asked. Why not just kill me? Rocco looked back at Emma, who was now riding her pink bicycle in circles on the sidewalk, laughing as her mother watched from the porch. Because that little girl asked me to promise you wouldn't hurt any more kids, and I don't break promises to children. As Vincent's bus pulled away from the station that evening, Rocco stood watching from his car, ensuring the man who had terrorized innocent families was truly gone. But his work wasn't finished. Over the following weeks, Rocco quietly investigated every aspect of his organization. He discovered that Vincent's crimes weren't isolated incidents, but part of a larger pattern of corruption that had infected several levels of his operation. 3 more men were found to be running similar schemes in different neighborhoods. 2 were exiled like Vincent. 1, who had specifically targeted single mothers with young children, simply vanished without a trace. But the real change came in how Rocco restructured his entire operation. New rules were established and carved in stone. No collections from families with children under 18. No targeting of widows or single parents. No violence against anyone who posed no threat to the organization. More importantly, Rocco established what he privately called the Emma Fund. Money skimmed from his legitimate businesses, used to help families in crisis throughout the city. Food for hungry children, medicine for sick parents, legal aid for people being exploited by predators like Vincent. Because sometimes the most powerful man in the city is the one who remembers what it feels like to see a child's tears and decides that some things are more important than profit. Sometimes justice comes not from courtrooms or police stations, but from the simple recognition that protecting innocent people is the only way to live with yourself. And sometimes, all it takes is one little girl with a pink bicycle to remind a dangerous man that even in the darkest corners of the world, there are still lines that should never be crossed. But this story isn't over yet, because 3 months later, Rocco received a phone call that would test everything he believed about justice, family, and the price of protecting those who cannot protect themselves. 3 months after Vincent's exile, the phone call came at 2 in the morning. Rocco answered on the second ring, his voice sharp with the alertness of a man who never truly slept peacefully. "Boss, we got a problem." It was Tony, his voice tight with urgency. "Remember that Thompson family? The little girl with the bike?" Rocco sat up immediately, every muscle in his body tensing. "What happened?" "Someone torched their house tonight. Sarah and Emma barely got out alive." The phone almost shattered in Rocco's grip. "Where are they now?" "Hospital. Both suffering from smoke inhalation. But they'll live." "Boss, there's more. This wasn't random. Someone left a message spray-painted on their front lawn." "What did it say?" "Snitches burn." Rocco was already pulling on his clothes, his mind racing through possibilities. Someone knew. Someone had discovered that Sarah Thompson was the woman who exposed Vincent's operation. Someone wanted to send a message that cooperation with Rocco Moretti came with consequences. "Tony, I want every man we have watching that hospital. No one gets near those girls without my permission, and I want to know who's been asking questions about the Thompson family." "Already on it, boss. But there's something else you need to know." Rocco paused, his hand on the door handle. "What?" "The fire department found accelerant poured in a pattern around the house. Professional work. This wasn't some street punk trying to scare them. This was someone who knows how to kill people and make it look like an accident." The drive to the hospital took 12 minutes through empty streets. 12 minutes for Rocco's anger to build from simmer to boil. Someone had tried to murder a 7-year-old girl because her mother had trusted him. Someone had decided that Emma Thompson deserved to burn alive because she had asked a dangerous man to buy her bicycle. The hospital's pediatric wing was quiet at 3 in the morning, but Rocco's footsteps echoed like gunshots down the sterile hallway. He found Sarah and Emma in a shared room, both connected to oxygen machines, their faces streaked with soot and exhaustion. Emma looked up when he entered, her small hand reaching toward him despite the IV tube taped to her arm. "Mr. Rocco? Did the bad men come back?" Those words hit him harder than any bullet ever had. This child had barely escaped death, was lying in a hospital bed struggling to breathe, and her first thought was that she had somehow brought this danger on herself. "No, sweetheart," Rocco said softly, pulling a chair close to her bed. "The bad men didn't come back. Different bad men tried to hurt you, but they failed, and they're going to pay for what they did." Sarah opened her eyes at the sound of his voice. When she saw him, tears began streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered through the oxygen mask. "I'm sorry we trusted you. I'm sorry I got Emma involved in your world." Rocco felt something crack inside his chest. This woman was apologizing to him. This mother was blaming herself for the fact that someone had tried to burn her child alive because she had accepted his protection. "Sarah, listen to me." His voice was gentle but firm. "This is not your fault. You didn't bring this on your family. Someone tried to hurt you because they're afraid of what you represent." "What do we represent?" Emma asked, her young voice muffled by the oxygen mask. "Hope," Rocco said simply. "You represent the idea that good people can trust me to protect them. And there are some very bad people who don't want anyone to believe that." 6 months later, Emma Thompson celebrated her 8th birthday in a house with working electricity, a full refrigerator, and a pink bicycle parked safely in her own garage. The scars from that terrible night had faded from her skin, but the lesson remained burned into Rocco's memory forever. Sometimes the most dangerous man in the city is the one who learns that true power comes not from inspiring fear, but from protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Because when a 7-year-old girl is brave enough to sell her bicycle to feed her mother, she teaches even the hardest hearts that some things in this world are still worth fighting for.